glues of relationships: normal, empath, narcissistic, and narcissists. Hello, I'm H.G. Tudor. I provide you with unrivaled insight into the world of narcissists and our victims. I help you understand the dynamic between us and other types of people. To convey this to you in a way which is easy to understand, but also provides you with the accurate insight, I divide people into four main groups: normal, empath, narcissistic, and narcissists. Before I get into telling you about the glues of these groups and their interaction with one another, it pays to have a brief reminder of the distinguishing factors of each of these groups. Normal people are those that have very low to moderate empathic traits and very low to moderate narcissistic traits. Normal people, the largest group on the planet, have considerable emotional empathy for a small group known as their circle of empathy. This would mean their children, their siblings, their parents, grandparents, grandchildren, cousins, friends, maybe some colleagues, maybe some neighbours. But that emotional empathy doesn't extend to strangers. This is why, for example, many internet trolls are drawn from the ranks of the normal, because that individual doesn't exhibit emotional empathy for that stranger on the internet. If you'd like to understand more about the concept of the troll, the online troll, then just watch my video of that name. Where the normal has emotional empathy for somebody, it's substantial, and on a day-to-day basis they're governed by that and the relevant traits, both empathic and narcissistic. Their emotional empathy is capable of erosion by external matters. Some normals lean more towards being empathic. Some have a leaning towards narcissistic. Many criminals come from the ranks of normals. So a criminal, for example, can honestly love his children, but then go out and smash the face in of a stranger on a night out. Another would never steal from his mother, but would quite regularly and repeatedly steal from the houses of other strangers, because those individuals are not known to him, and therefore he has no emotional empathy for them. With regard to the empath group, which is the second largest group, those individuals have considerable emotional empathy for a wide range of people. They have large circles of empathy. This emotional empathy can be eroded, of course, by external stressors. And if you'd like to understand more about that, go to the Knowledge Vault and obtain Why Am I Behaving Like a Narcissist? The empaths are divided into schools, as per my categorization: standard, super, codependent, and contagion, and also into cadres: saviour, martyr, carrier, geezer, and magnet. There are similarities and variances between those schools and cadres, which is not the subject of this video today. The empath group has empathic traits which range from moderate to very high, and has narcissistic traits that will range from very low to very high. And the important point to note is that with regard to these traits, the empathic traits outrank the narcissistic traits, keeping them in check unless there's an external stressor. The narcissistic group, these people are not narcissists. They do have limited emotional empathy, less than the empath, less than the normal. They are driven by much stronger narcissistic traits, and therefore their narcissistic traits will be seen to be from moderately high through to extremely high. They will also have limited and low empathic traits, ranging from low to roughly moderate. Narcissic individuals, just like empathic people and normals, can engage in manipulative behavior. Narcissistic individuals are more likely to do it compared to the other two groupings, and, of course, just like them, be aware that they're engaging in it. Narcissistic individuals are also prone to the reduction of their emotional empathy, worsening and exacerbating the existing narcissistic traits. The fact that their narcissistic traits are already strong and there's not a lot of emotional empathy available to be eroded means that these individuals can often present like a narcissist but aren't. Finally, there's my group, the Narcissists, or strictly speaking for me, narcissistic psychopath, and I will be doing separate work distinguishing between narcissists, psychopaths, and narcissistic psychopaths. The Narcissist group, I of course divide into lesser, mid-range, greater, and ultra in terms of school, with various sub-schools amongst lesser, mid-range, and greater, and the cadres of victim, somatic, cerebral, and elite. Narcissists have no emotional empathy whatsoever. Some narcissists have cognitive empathy, having learned that. We have no empathic traits, but we can manufacture them, fake them. We have narcissistic traits, which invariably range from moderately high through to extremely high. We are manipulative. Most narcissists are unconsciously and inherently manipulative, not realizing that's what they're actually doing. A smaller group of narcissists know full well that they are consciously manipulating people and get off on that fact. There's plenty more to say about those groups, but that's the brief overview to help you. Now, what about the glue that goes on? Particularly vis-a-vis the narcissists interacting with those particular groups. And I've touched upon this in order to help you understand more, particularly in light of the analysis of Johnny Depp being found as narcissistic. Let's start with the normals. Normals will not be ensnared anywhere near as often by a narcissist as an empath. The reason being, normals don't have the addiction to the narcissist. Furthermore, normals don't have an inherent and pathological need for control. They need some control over their lives, of course, but nowhere near to the extent of a narcissist. And therefore, in terms of their interpersonal relationships, they are neither a slave to the addiction nor beholden to the need for control. And what this means is that they are generally capable of forming functioning, healthy relationships with people. And when a narcissist comes along, they are either too difficult to ensnare, or if they do become ensnared, they shortly depart. So, for example, where a normal is love-bombed by a narcissist, they will think to themselves, whoa, this woman's far too much with all these text messages and wanting to see me all of the time. This doesn't feel right. She's over the top. I'm out of here. There's no addiction creating emotional thinking, drawing them to remain in the interaction, making them believe that this person is their soulmate. Similarly, they have no innate need to control that individual by continuing to interact with them. Some normals do get ensnared, of course, and when they become devalued, that's generally when they always get out. They realise this person's behaviour is just downright wrong. They may not realise they're dealing with a narcissist, and therefore they will walk. And therefore the absence of the need for control and the absence of addiction means that it's the normals who invariably walk away sooner and indeed don't get ensnared at all by narcissists. What about the empath group? Well, the empath has the addiction to the narcissist, which creates emotional thinking, which means that the empath is blinded as to what's really going on. That their addiction through emotional thinking suggests an alternative which cons them, so they continue to interact with the narcissist. That they continue to spend time with the narcissist, communicate with the narcissist, do things in relation to the narcissist. That they talk about the narcissist with other people. That they end up thinking repeatedly about the narcissist. The addiction is the enemy within. It corrupts traits. It causes the use of flawed logic, and it makes the empathic victim feel a particular way which isn't based upon anything genuine in order to keep them engaging. For instance, feeling in love, feeling furious and angry with regard to the behavior of the narcissist. So they want revenge. Feeling lovelorn, feeling frustrated, reminiscing, engaging in nostalgia, feeling hurt and in pain. There's lots of different emotions that can be corrupted and utilized by the emotional thinking. If you want to understand more about this addiction in terms of where it comes from, what it does, and importantly, what you can do about it, go to the Knowledge Vault and obtain the Addiction Triple Pack. But quite simply, the presence of the addiction to narcissist means that the empath is drawn to want to continue some form of involvement with a narcissist, even though logically they ought not to do so. In a way, they take leave of their senses and continue to engage in behaviours and receive behaviours which are not in their best interests. The empath, of course, can have a healthy relationship with another empath because they have no need for controlling anybody else, and in that situation, the addiction isn't alerted because the other person is not a narcissist. The addiction is still there, it's lifelong, but it's not activated, if you will. Similarly, when the empath interacts with the normal, there's no need for control on either side, and whilst only one party has the addiction, it's not activated because there's no narcissist present, thus increasing the possibilities and likelihood of a healthy interaction. The empathic addiction is not applicable to narcissistic individuals because it has to be a narcissist, but narcissistic individuals will prove attractive to empaths as a consequence of the similarity that they pose to narcissists. So what will happen is that a narcissistic individual will readily draw in an empath, but the empath stands a greater chance of being able to pull themselves away because of the absence of addiction. So generally speaking, the empath, almost in a way of like a creature seeing a false version of something else which they think that they're attracted to. So, for instance, it might be that there is a particular type of insect that wants to mate with another one, but then a different type of insect emulates the appearances of the second insect. So, let's say, for example, we'll use butterflies. So, keeping it simple, the blue butterfly wants to mate with the red butterfly. The green butterfly has the capacity to make itself look like the red butterfly and thus draw in the blue butterfly. But after a period of time, it becomes apparent that they're not a red butterfly, and the blue butterfly is able to remove themselves. There is no addiction to keep them in place. They can be drawn in initially, in effect, being conned by the similarity between the narcissistic individual and the narcissist. Those strong narcissistic traits of pride and envy and showmanship, causing the narcissistic person to be attractive to that empathic individual, causing them to be drawn in. But when the narcissistic individual, with their low emotional empathy, which might be eroded, starts to exhibit more selfish behaviours, exhibiting anger, jealousy, resentment, defiance, argumentativeness, and so forth, the empath is more likely to back away because there's no addiction holding them in place. The narcissistic individual, of course, has no inherent need for control in the way that a narcissist has, and of course, they have no addiction. The narcissistic individual can, of course, fall prey to the narcissist. The narcissistic individual can seek out an empath and a normal, and invariably does so, but they don't have to exhibit the same level of control that is pathological with the narcissist. A narcissistic individual is often appealing to a normal, but after a while, the selfishness, etc., and the absence of any addiction means that the normal would be likely to walk away. I've already explained the nature of the dynamic between empath and narcissistic individual. From the narcissistic person's point of view, because they're selfish, having somebody empathic who bends over backwards to do things for them is appealing. The fact that they have to be the show-off and the other person is more likely to be the straight man to the routine, if you will, also appeals. And therefore narcissistic individuals will be drawn to empaths also, not in the same way as a narcissist, but for similar bases based upon their narcissistic traits. The narcissistic individual also can be attracted to a narcissist. The reason for this is that the narcissist, of course, could appear like a false empath, appearing to be kind and caring and compassionate, and therefore emulates the behaviours that I've just described that makes an empath attractive to a narcissistic individual. Furthermore, the narcissist's desire to assert control results in the love bombing. And a love bombing of a narcissistic individual, who's not a narcissist, caters to their traits of pride and vanity, for example. So the golden period is particularly attractive to the narcissistic individual. And therefore there will be instances where a narcissistic individual and a narcissist will be drawn to one another. Remember, normals, empaths, narcissistic, and narcissists can all provide fuel. They can all provide character traits. They can all provide residual benefits. And therefore, they are attractive to a narcissist. The distinguishing factor, of course, is the issue of control. Empaths are the easiest to control because of their addiction. Normals are the hardest to control because their traits are weaker, meaning that they're less likely to stay attracted and they're more likely to see through matters and move away. Narcissistic individuals are attractive initially because of the exhibition of their own vanity and pride and showmanship, which draws the narcissist in. However, over time, and as the emotional empathy becomes eroded as a consequence of the narcissist's behaviours towards the narcissistic individual, that narcissistic individual becomes less attractive as their selfishness, their anger, their argumentative comes to the fore, threatening the narcissist's sense of control. In terms of the glue, it's the normal that really doesn't have any. They are, of course, appealing to all three, but they're more likely to remain in a relationship with their own kind or an empath. Narcissistic individuals become problematic after a period of time, and narcissists invariably become problematic very quickly indeed, and the absence of an addiction means the normal walks away. The empath can form a healthy relationship with a normal and of their own kind. With a narcissistic individual, it starts off well, but can, over a reasonable period of time, the exhibition of those unpleasant behaviours, because of the strong narcissistic traits, makes life difficult for the empath. Whilst they have no addiction to the narcissistic individual, they will still be drawn in, but they'll find it easier to move away than compared to a narcissist. The empath, of course, is addicted to the narcissist, and that is the glue that holds them in place through emotional thinking as I've described, and also, of course, the narcissist's inherent need to assert control. The narcissist asserts control over the empath, and the empath is subjugated through their addiction, resulting in the symbiotic relationship. A narcissist may seek to assert control over a normal, but with those weaker traits and the absence of an addiction, they're more likely to walk away. A narcissist will also be attracted to a narcissistic individual. They do exhibit emotional empathy, and their more showmanship side can be utilised in terms of, for example, character trait acquisition. And as mentioned, they provide fuel, character traits, and residual benefits, just like the other categories. However, over time, a narcissistic individual proves difficult to control, proving repeated threats to the narcissist's control, which can lead to a turbulent relationship. When it comes to narc-on-narc action, well, I direct you to the videos of When Narcissists Collide. So in terms of the glue, the strongest glue is that between narcissist and empath, that innate need to control, and the presence of the addiction means that those two individuals, the empath and the narcissist, really do stick together, and it takes a lot more to prise them apart. There is little glue around the normal, and there is some glue around the narcissistic individuals, driven by the prevalence of their traits and their attractiveness to empaths, because of the similarity but not being the same as a narcissist. It's important to understand these clues so that you can understand why the categorizations of people that I have mentioned are drawn to one another. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.